Welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, dedicated to exploring the interesting journeys of the people in the provincial construction industry. Presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. Join us as we chat with the inspirational individuals that ensure the continued growth of the construction industry and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Welcome to another edition of Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and produced by Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale, and with me as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Doing well, Alan. I am on with someone who is in a company that I've heard about. I actually, years ago, David, used to do a little bit of work when I worked in the newspaper. And remember a time when you used to place job ads in the paper? Well, I date back to that. So I appreciate the business then. And I look forward to learning more about you and the Cal Group.
Absolutely, Jerry. Exciting times in the construction industry in Newfoundland. All of our guests talk about one thing, and that is their part in building Newfoundland and their desire for more people to join, because there's a lot of opportunity there right now. And we're certainly glad to have Dave Cal on the conversation with us today. So, Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Thanks, guys. Well, thanks for having me on this podcast. Definitely appreciate it and happy to be here. So my name's David Cal, from St. John's, Newfoundland originally. I grew up in the west end of town, so it's certainly not the east end.
We won't hold that against you.
The best end is the west end, but we'll leave it at that. So I grew up in the west end of town around the Waterford Road area. So this is my parents, and I have an older sister. So she's living down in Miami at the moment, doing her PhD in psychiatry. So essentially the childhood was a great childhood, and was really active in sports growing up, spent a lot of time outdoors and things like that. As I grew up and got out of high school, I always kind of wanted to be an engineer. My dad is an engineer, that was a pretty big influence for me throughout my whole life. And I guess I was kind of lucky in that regard, knowing exactly what I kind of wanted to do when I grew up. Because I know, for most people, that's usually a tough decision, trying to figure out what you truly like to do and things like that. So I'm, certainly grateful for the influence my dad had on me for that. And just definitely that kind of interest kind of skyrocketed throughout my childhood, based from even, building Lego blocks as a kid and things like that, right? That kind of where it's all started. And, as I got into junior high, started with our family business, the Cal Group, mowing lawns in the summertime on the properties throughout the city. And so then after high school, I kind of knew, hey, engineering was definitely for me. So I attended Memorial University, the engineering program there. So I started that program in 2007. And so back then it was, I guess, still the old program. So it was a 6-year program. So I graduated from engineering in 2013. I found the whole engineering experience great. It was a co-op program, so the work terms were great experience and good chance to travel. That's all part of it, kind of being able to leave home and get some different experiences and whatnot. So I definitely really like that aspect of things. And I guess with engineering in general, it's definitely a team sport. So definitely the camaraderie and all that was excellent, right? So I think that was kind of, the foundation of, once I kind of graduate engineering, getting into what I'm doing now with construction and things like that. but yeah, so I mean, from the work term front, I mean, I was able to kind of travel down to Houston, did a couple of work terms in Calgary and Fort McMurray, and kind of had a wide range of different opportunities in terms of working for the client, the owner, and also from the construction standpoint. So I think getting that experience helped me realize what I wanted to do, and and truly to kind of continue on with the family business with Calgary.
100%, Dave. I mean, that co-op program is brilliant, right? That experiential learning piece really connects you with and early on whether this is for you or not. I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think Mon does an excellent job of trying to reach out to other companies, not just in Canada, but down in the States and overseas. Just to get their students the best opportunity and to experience different things, right? So I think certainly it was an excellent program, and I think they're doing some great things over there.
David, sorry, I got a question. We hope youth will watch this, and we hope that you will inspire youth to enter into the engineering program. Quick question about that. Several of my cousins went through engineering. Did you excel at math right up through, or did you really have to work at it? Just give me a sense of that.
I enjoyed math, so I was kind of naturally gifted with math. Certainly wasn't the superstar by any means, but something that I kind of understood and got. So I mean, math is definitely a tricky one that some people just can't grasp it, right? So which is because it's just like anything, it's totally different than English as an example, like writing and things like that. I mean, it's just a different skill set, and your mind works differently, right? So.
Well, I know some other people that struggled with school, frankly, but went into engineering, and when the math got applied to actual concepts, they excelled. So, if anyone is watching and they are concerned about getting an engineering because of math, I think that you can overcome that.
Oh, for sure. And, and there's lots of help around. And I find with anything, I mean, it is all about teamwork. And, I think university in general for most degrees, and, speaking, especially for engineering, is you need to rely on others to really, help each other out to kind of get through it, because it is a lot of work, right? So, and, there's lots of help from the professors and things like that as well.
I love the way you describe that, Dave. You talk about, your co-op experience. You talk about it's a team sport. You talk about teamwork. You talk about help. What you're describing there is an industry that wants to help people succeed. Am I correct?
Yes, for sure. I mean, starting off in engineering, it's tough. I mean, they kind of give you your first day, your first class. They kind of give you the old look to your left, look to your right. You probably won't see that individual in a year's time. It's just, I guess, classic scare tactic, I guess, to, I guess, the cruel reality of engineering. I guess you really got to really like it, because you got to work at it. But once you get in, you're good, and certainly they're there to help, right? But the initial years, it's definitely a tough slog for sure.
For sure. So what are you into now, the Cal Group? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess I started with first of all, the Cal Group is, a family business that my grandfather started back in 1953 in his house. He was a, electrician by trade, and just kind of grew the business from residential to small commercial. Then, my dad did engineering as well, and he graduated in the 80s, and then he started with another company before joining the GJ Cal with my grandfather. So he joined them, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, and he kind of just basically took it from there, and it's definitely grew exponentially. Now we're obviously into a whole lot of things, not just electrical, now into, all trades essentially. different industries, the industrial industry, oil and gas, mining, utilities and whatnot.
David, sorry for interrupting you. Did your grandfather get a chance to see the growth of that family business?
He did, yeah. I mean, he's certainly type of individual that he always liked to be involved. I mean, he was still going into the office when he was 80, just to pop in, just to kind of touch base and talk to everyone. And just because, I guess he was kind of, he started the business and he truly was really passionate about the kind of construction industry, and kind of, I think he was also, proud of Dad for kind of keeping the family name going and things like that. So it was, so it was interesting that he was always kind of, up until he was around 80, and he was always popping into the office just to
That's great.
say hello and talk to the employees. And I think how, the employees at the time really loved that as well, just because you kind of get to see the roots of the organization. Right?
David, this is great. I mean, I love a story about family businesses and over generation after generation. So there's your granddad starts off as an electrician and sets us up out of his house and trickles on down. And you start by mowing lawns on some of the properties you guys are working on. It's a beautiful story of how the family business grows over time. And when did you first come into contact with the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association? How did you first touch them?
Well, I guess to backtrack slightly. So when I started with the company, I started, I guess, September 2013, and I worked out west. So I lived in Calgary for, about 4 years, just up in Fort Mac on some of our oil and gas jobs as a field engineer, and then after 4 years, I got transferred back to Newfoundland. So that was around 2017. And then when I got back to Newfoundland, I kind of changed gears and started looking into our kind of commercial infrastructure projects and whatnot. So I was a project manager on one of those. And then, so once that started, so I'd say probably in when I moved back to Newfoundland, that's where I started kind of hearing about the Newfoundland Construction Association, taking part in some training courses they offer and things like that. Because my grandfather and dad were involved in that association throughout the years. So I did kind of hear about it. And then probably in, I guess, 2020, last year, I was asked, why don't you try to get on the board of directors of the Newfoundland Construction Association to see, if that would pique my interest and give a nice opportunity to see what I can contribute to the association and the province in that regard, and then in more so kind of also get an opportunity to meet other people in the industry and kind of collaborate with them. So I was lucky enough to get on the board of directors last year. As the mechanical electrical section chair. So that was a really good experience, and it was a different year because of COVID, as you know, right?
Yeah. And you talk about the board, an opportunity to collaborate, and that's really resonates. And everybody we talk to in this association, and indeed in this industry, while there's competition there's a genuine desire to collaborate for the good of Newfoundland and Labrador. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%. And that's what I kind of love about that association. I was, when I first got into it, I was, a bit hesitant on that regard, just because, a lot of members on the board that you deal with are, members of different firms that you kind of compete with on a daily basis and whatnot. But I think it's, to your point, it's awesome that you can kind of put that aside and kind of meet and work together to see what we can do for the greater good of the province and the workers in the province, to make sure that we're all employed and busy and just to help everyone out, right? So really
just you saying that makes me feel good, right? When big groups come together for the good of all. That's fantastic. That's leadership at an institutional level. And that's just fantastic to see. You know, we see so much opportunity. Jerry and I have the privilege to talk to so many people in your industry, and we see so much opportunity for people in there. Talk about the opportunity that exists right now in Newfoundland in the construction industry.
Yeah, I mean, the construction industry is definitely is booming. I mean, it's you know, I know last year was, you know, COVID was you know, caused some issues and whatnot, but for the most part, construction continued on. Obviously, things need to get built, right? So there's real opportunity in all really sectors right now. Like the mining industry is the bigger one, but infrastructure is also a big one now as well, just from the government and whatnot and what they're spending and things like that. And the big thing we're seeing now is there's a real shortage on tradespeople. Wow. There's not enough tradespeople in the province to tackle all the work that is ongoing and that is coming up for the most part, right? So that's a big issue that we foresee, and I think it's really across Canada and even worldwide, to my understanding, that there's a bit of a gap there in terms of younger people wanting to get into the trades and even construction industry in general.
Amazing. You know, Alan, this is what is interesting. If you're going to listen to some of the naysayers out there, oh, Newfoundland is this, Newfoundland is that, it's trouble. David, thank you for sharing that, because it's so important to hear it from someone like yourself. There's opportunities galore in this province.
And not only opportunities, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are good paying jobs.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely they're good wages, and it's definitely a up and down industry in terms of, you know, project to project. But I mean, it's overall, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's definitely great paying jobs, and it's just a great opportunity really to learn a lot as well. Because I mean, they are pretty cool projects that go on, right? And I mean, for me, I'm really interested and really love seeing things being built.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty cool. So I think you know, hopefully there's more people like that out there, which I think there is, and especially the younger generation. I think, you know, I think if they're not realizing it, I think hopefully we just need to kind of tell them a bit more about the industry and explain the opportunities that are there.
Funny, Alan, we in our guests, many of them in your industry, David, talk about building things. And of course, I talk about being in advertising, but I remember selling radio advertising. You know, I sold ear for a living, and I never really knew, couldn't see anything, you know?
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that you're building something.
And I think you're right, Dave. I think a lot of people like to see the results of their work. They like to see the projects they were involved in, things being built, things in the province, and they want to make a difference. And it's just showing folks that you really are making a difference when you're in this industry. You're building the province in totality, and that's fantastic. I'm excited to hear what's over the horizon for not only the Cal Group, not only the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, but for Dave Cal. What's over the horizon for you guys?
I guess for me, I mean, it's we're certainly busy at the company and things like that. And right now, for me personally at the company, I'm a director of projects, kind of looking after our industrial work here in the province. So essentially, you know, looking to do a lot more with the company, and certainly there's a fast track for myself to kind of keep moving up with the company and whatnot. And so it's exciting times to kind of really want to bring, you know, the company to the next level. It's been, you know, such a success over the years and whatnot. So it's got to keep that momentum going and kind of have to kind of pivot and adjust with the times based on what we're seeing in the market and in industries and things like that. I mean, there's lots of different ways that diversify and things like that. So, I mean, with oil and gas down a bit, which I think will come back, in order to be successful, you got to kind of be able to pivot and see, okay, what else is out there, right? So certainly always trying to be innovative and looking ahead to see what more we can do to kind of keep our good momentum going.
And, when the Cal Group grows and when it, when you get on to the next iteration of what that might be and what you're involved in, a lot of people are coming along with you.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I mean, we got a great group here. And, honestly, I think in the province as a whole, industry as a whole, there's great people around, right? So I think it's our job now is to mentor the younger generation now and try to get them engaged early and excited about the industry. And because, we do need that younger generation to keep things going. And they bring another perspective to things that, I'm not old by all means, I'm only 32. But I mean, there is still a different perspective, even compared to me and the younger generation, right? So I think always looking for that is important, and that not only the younger generation, but either with either women or different backgrounds and things like that. Just making sure we kind of look holistically at that diversity piece, really. Yeah.
So perfect, right? Everybody's opinion and everybody's perspective is important in how the province of Newfoundland and Labrador grows and indeed gets built. So you hit the nail right on the head, Dave. That's a great look over the horizon, a great perspective from you. We often ask our guests to leave the audience with one small takeaway. You're a guy that you started off mowing lawns there at the company properties and stuff, and it went on to have a great journey in the industry and continuing on a great journey in the industry. What would that one piece of advice be to somebody who's looking at this industry right now?
I guess the big thing I could say is you got to work hard and don't be afraid, to bounce back if things don't go your way. I mean, you got to be resilient and keep trying and just find something you love and never give up. And just make sure as well that you treat others with respect and you try to learn as much from others and kind of understand what others can bring to the table. So I mean, that's the big part of it, is try to learn as much as possible and collaborate with others, be resilient and kind of keep working hard and don't give up. Absolutely.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, it's just a pleasure having you on, David. While you were speaking, I went to your website, cal.ca. You say you're the director of projects. There's 4 pages of projects on your site. You're one heck of a busy guy. In addition, there's 10 open job opportunities. So, ladies and gentlemen, what David is saying is there's an incredible amount of opportunities, and you're at the epicenter of a company making a lot happen. Thank you for what you're doing for Newfoundland.
Yes, no problem. Thank you, guys.
Well, another wonderful edition of Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. Great to be in conversation with Dave Cal. Now, here's a guy who has engineering deep in his veins, but didn't just kind of slide into the job at the top level, started mowing lawns in the company and worked his way up. And that's pretty impressive. And now is willing to take that company to the next level. But he knows that he can't do it without a lot of people helping him out, a lot of young people, a lot of people from other backgrounds that give him different perspective. And he knows that he can make this province a better place. We sure are happy to have Dave Cal on the podcast here today. And I always like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, Dave, and that is quite simply, the Newfoundland and Labrador construction industry needs more Dave Cal.
Alan, I'm really enjoying this, what we're doing, frankly. There's been a bit of time between recordings for this budding podcast for NLCA, so I'm looking forward to it. I will say that my mug is here and I'm drinking tea in my mug right now.
Well, there you go, Jerry. That's fantastic. I'm a coffee guy and I'm also drinking out of the mug, and I certainly appreciate those guys sending it to us. A lot of great things happening in the Newfoundland and Labrador construction ecosystem, a lot of exciting bills and a lot of good conversations moving around, and Newfoundland and Labrador poised to emerge out of this latest global pandemic stronger, no doubt about it. And it's because of the good things that the people at the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and largely all of their members are doing. So without further ado, Richard, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name's Richard Goss. I'm a partner with Cox and Palmer Law Firm. I'm working at the St. John's office, and I'm a member of the board of directors of the Construction Association. A couple of years back, they decided that they wanted to install a lawyer in a formal position on the board to give legal advice and keep an eye on technical procedure and things like that, but just to look at things through that lens. And so I've been lucky enough to be involved there since, I joined the board in 2019, but I honestly couldn't say how long I've been around the Construction Association. I've been involved with them for certainly more than 10 years. They're really open and inviting and welcoming, and they're always looking for ways to add value for the membership. And so that was kind of my entry point with them. Richard,
let's go back a little bit further. Where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
So I live in St. John's. I've lived here now for most of my life, but I grew up in Whitburn, and that's where my family is from. Child number 5 out of 6. My dad worked for Newfoundland Power, and all the while that I was growing up, my mom looked after us at home. Only after I left and my dad retired did she decide that she was going to get a job that had a paycheck associated with it. But mom's still back home, and it's these days it's mostly a place to go for Sunday dinner. But moved to St. John's to go to Memorial, left and went to Saskatchewan for law school, and came back here in '93 when I graduated. And I've been at this firm now for a very long time.
Yeah. Richard, mom 6, that's a full-time job right there. Can't believe she wanted to go to work.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because she never had a job that had a check associated with it until I started university. But she's always one of these people that was involved in everything, still is. She's 87. She's still on the museum board, the library board. She helps out with the ACW. Just, one of these people that if she sees something that needs to be done, she just does it. What are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's great to have those people in our society, those people that are willing to lean in and just kind of help out where they see a hole. That's fantastic. A lot of people like that, of course, in the association, the membership that you're involved in presently. I'm curious about what brought you out to Saskatchewan. Why did you focus on there?
Well, it's funny. When I applied, I had no intention of going, but I just sort of cast a broad net. And it was the first place that I heard back from, and they accepted me right away. And I thought, oh, that could be interesting. I'll go out there for a year and I'll transfer back east. When I get out there, it turned out I really liked it.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan is a real, it's funny because it has so many parallels to Newfoundland. It's about big families and rural-based economy, and fluctuates a lot with how natural resources are treated, but they've got an eye to the future with especially industry, and it's a growth center these days, or at least in my mind it is, and it's a real welcoming place. It's really cold, but it's a really welcoming place, and I really enjoyed my time there. I think if I was from somewhere else but here, I might have even stayed out there, but you know what it's like with Newfoundlanders, if you're not in Newfoundland, then you're away from home.
You're so right, Richard.
Alan knows all about that, don't you, Alan?
Yeah. Jerry knows this. I once was involved in a reality TV show in Saskatchewan, and I came away with the exact same impression. I mean, they are a lot like East Coasters. They rely heavily on one another, and although the term out there doesn't resonate well, but they do understand that a rising tide floats all boats and that they're stronger together for sure. And that really finds itself into what we want to talk about here today. So presently, Richard, you're involved in the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. You're on the board. Tell me about the first time you touched that organization, because to me, going from law school to the construction industry, it's not a clear path. Tell me about the first time you touched that industry.
Well, it's funny because I had a little bit of a work background, but the most loose affiliation with any kind of industry connection there, because I like I say, I grew up in Whitburn. And I had a couple of great summer jobs with the town, with Newfoundland Power, and with Newfoundland Hydro. And so, I wasn't unfamiliar with me to see people in industry. Certainly did not have a white collar background. Right. And when I started with Cox and Palmer, it wasn't called Cox and Palmer then. It was one of the firms that had joined in through a series of affiliations and came together through mergers to become Cox and Palmer. But I was lucky enough that the people that I had a chance to work with were doing construction-related work. And so, there were clients who had issues with being paid on projects. There were clients who were running projects that had issues with professional liability. There were clients that were trying to figure out how tenders and procurements were supposed to run and that sort of thing. So there was all this great opportunity to connect with people. And the Construction Association at the time had started, outreach is a funny word to use, but that was how I regarded it. They started touching base with people who weren't traditionally members of the Construction Association, saying, look, there's value to our members if you could share with us your thoughts on how this is supposed to work. Maybe you could write an article, or on how that's supposed to work. Maybe you could speak at our conference, our AGM. And so I sort of came in that way, I think, first through writing articles and then through speaking invitations. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it made sense for me as a way to connect with clients. And I don't mean as a way for me to be handing out business cards. I mean, as a way to understand what is it that you have as a concern? What is it that you're trying to accomplish, but you're finding that you've got to work around? It's just a great way to get a better understanding of what people are trying to do. And lo and behold, you wake up one morning and go, oh, so I've been doing this now for 27 years. I guess it's fair to call me a construction lawyer now.
Right.
And
Richard, it's funny, like I've been in business development for 30 years. Alan is in it as well. It's clear to me that you provide value to that organization. So, the marriage between you and that association is a good thing. I can tell. Yes, someone might say, well, we just want to pass out business cards, but ultimately we all provide value, and it's not about getting the business card out in front of as many people. I can tell from talking to you that it's about the value you're providing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anybody can place an ad. No big deal. You just got to be able to write a check. But it takes a little bit of time and effort to put together a presentation, even if it seems like you're always talking about the same half dozen types of topics. You've got to be current on it. And why would you bother to do that if you weren't getting something back? And what I find I get back is I get these great questions. I get these wonderful insights or observations from people that attend who just sort of throw in their 2 cents about, when I tried that, this happened, and I thought it was because of this. And you stop and go, yes, it was exactly because of that. How come I haven't thought of that? That's something that I need to be thinking about when I'm looking at how a case might go forward, or how a contract should be drafted, or how a claim might be settled. Those are the types of things that I need to know about, because it's no good for me to be up in a glass tower, which I joke at because I'm on the top floor of the Scotia Center.
You are in a glass tower.
Glass tower.
Richard, I love the way that you described your involvement with them and how you're adding value, but they're equally adding value to you. I mean, it's a great relationship when that happens. It's not a one-way conversation. It's a true conversation. It's back and forth. You're learning a lot for them. That industry, there's a lot of moving parts. It's complex. And I'm sure that guys get into situations where they need that little bit of advice from legal officials to say, hey, maybe you should consider doing things this way. And with 27 years of experience now under your belt, you've probably seen a lot of really interesting things, eh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, lots of interesting things, lots of interesting scenarios. But really one consistency, and that is, how do I say this politely now? That you got to be true to what it is that you're doing. You got to be reasonable in your expectations of the other guy and of yourself. You can't expect that you're going to take advantage. So if it's just BS, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
And I've always felt that was part of the success story in Newfoundland, is that where people can slide through, perhaps on being slick and looking real good in other places, in Newfoundland, you got to be the real deal.
Yeah.
You got to say there. Sorry, Richard. I often thought about it. If you opened a restaurant in New York, it might take, by the time people realize it's no good, you may have done very well. Here, you bloody well better serve up a good meal right from the start. You don't have enough people to draw on.
Well, especially since the first thing people are going to do is in the first 5 minutes, figure out how you're related.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet on the podcast, Al. We got to do that.
100%, Richard. And that's a great way to describe it. It's be true and genuine in your approach. And I'm sure in that industry, even more than many, there's such people that Jerry and I have had the privilege of encountering through the podcast. They're just honest, decent, genuine people that are trying to better the community around them. It's fantastic. I want to talk to you about, one of the things that I've noticed and quite a bit is that it just seems like such an open group at the moment. Like they're welcoming of just about everybody to get involved because there's a lot of work to be done. What are your thoughts on that, Richard?
That's absolutely correct. They have a very diverse board right now that is trying to capture everybody's viewpoints in a sensible and organized way, because there's a lot of unique perspectives that need to be captured, but everybody is rowing in the same direction. Everybody is trying, as you said, the rising tide floats all boats. Everybody does well. And it was when I joined the board, it was really special to me to be able to look and see how all these pieces have to fit together in order to get the job done. Because when was the last time that you had someone show up to do a sophisticated job for you and they did everything? That never happens. They bring in the expert who looks after this discipline, that discipline, that discipline. Everybody has some subcontractor, specialty trade, or the other side of it, some generalist that fills in the gaps. And they all come together as a team and they all deliver this integrated product that works so beautifully together So why shouldn't they all have a voice? Of course they should all have a voice. And so there's all this space for all these specialty groups to come together there. And what are they focused on? They're focused on their business and how their business succeeds because their business works with your business. And your business is not going to go anywhere if they can't bring in people who can do the work. And that brings it around full circle to, well, what are we doing for education and training? We've got people that we can hire right now, or maybe we could hire a few more people, but we're concerned about having people for tomorrow. We need to make sure that we're looking after the future. We need to see how this is going to roll out properly. And it's naturally that each one should look after their individual interests by looking at the group, because this is the community that we all live in. I mean, any of the volunteer work that I do, it's because it's part of where I live. Why wouldn't you make it the best place it can be?
Yeah. You summarized that perfectly, Richard. I mean, your opening statement that, everybody's in this boat rowing together. What you've just described there is an incredibly collaborative environment where everybody is pitching in. Notwithstanding, there's competition in the mix, but everybody sees the bigger picture that we're stronger together here, collaborating, and look over the horizon, because we need a workforce, a sustainable workforce, keep coming in. And that's another thing I just wanted to touch on briefly. I mean, new technology is everywhere, and especially in this industry. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's absolutely astounding to me, who has all these files in boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes. And someone will look at me and I'll say, that's one case. And they kind of shake their heads. And then what happened? Oh, we had COVID. Okay, so what did that mean? One Thursday, I packed up my laptop and went home. And that Friday morning, I got up at the regular time and started work and realized it's no good for me to take notes in longhand, because where am I going to put them? So all of a sudden, I'm taking notes on my laptop as if I was one of my kids, because that's what they always do. And just trying to figure out, how do I make things more portable? How do I make it more functional? And what are the moving pieces there? So it's one thing to say, yeah, I want to be involved in construction. I'm going to be a carpenter. Excellent. You can also just as easily say, I want to be involved in construction. I want to set up databases. I want to learn how to not just make the drawings through whatever platform they're using these days. I want that platform to be functional enough so that someone on a job site can pull out an iPad and be able to zoom in and functionally do their job. And if changes need to be made or noted or issues identified, then they can just work from where they are. That is as big a part of getting the job done as swinging a hammer ever could be.
100%, 100%. Richard, what you've described there is a beautiful industry to be involved in. A lot of moving parts for sure, a lot of opportunity for sure. But what I sense is there's a lot of people in the mix that are willing to mentor, they're willing to help people along, and it's inviting. It's a welcoming organization. I mean, that's wonderful to see that happening right in Newfoundland. But to be quite honest with you, I'm never surprised by the good things that are happening in Newfoundland when people are in the mix, right? When people are genuine and honest and they're in the mix, there's no doubt about it, good things happen in Newfoundland. Richard, we always ask our guest to leave the audience with a piece of advice. Now, you're a guy being around, one of 6 kids growing up. I like to call it out around the bay, because to me, that's out around the bay, even though you're probably not close to a bay, but right. But here's a kid growing up, you go to school in Saskatchewan, done some interesting stuff. You come back, you dive in, and as you say, before you know it, 27 years go by, you've been involved in this industry. What would that piece of advice be?
Figure out how to like what you're doing. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. I mean, they call it work for a reason, but you have to like it. For me, that is being able to take pride in what you're doing, in doing a good job, in feeling like you're helping somebody out. It's not this academic exercise where people say, oh, well, look, grade me on this. Did I do a good job? Did I not do a good job? Did somebody feel like you helped them out? That's everything. That is absolutely everything. And if you can do that, if you can like what you're doing, you're going to do well with it. There's going to be frustrations, but you're going to do well with it. And you're going to figure out how to take it into whatever level you want it to be in. I mean, sure, there's luck along the way. I consider myself exceptionally lucky to have landed in the firm that I landed in, to be able to work with the people that I've worked with. I mean, there's not a contract, there's not a legal dispute, there's not a project that we haven't had a bite on one corner of in this province. I mean, it's phenomenal. How did I get a chance to do that? I grew up in Whitburn, one of 6 kids. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah.
But if I wasn't in a position where I could try to do my best and make sure that I was pleased with what I was doing, they certainly wouldn't have kept me.
100%. Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, I just love the conversation. A lot of the people we've spoken to for the Building Newfoundland Labrador podcast have talked a little bit about preconceived notions of this, that, and the other thing, be it, working with your hands. What strikes me, Richard, is how authentic you are. It's really important for the youth of this community to see how you can go from Whitburn, and like you said, in your own head, how did I get this opportunity? Well, you know what? It's by being authentic. And we can, even despite the fact this is a virtual platform, we can see why you are successful. So thank you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you. It has been a real privilege speaking to you, gentlemen.
Well, what another wonderful edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. There's no doubt about it. Richard's an inspirational guy. I mean, here's a guy that, puts on a shirt and tie, goes to work with one goal, and that is to help people, to see people do better. And that's just a remarkable thing. We talked about genuine and being authentic. Well, Richard's got it in spades. It was fantastic conversation. And what I really enjoyed was just how inviting that whole association is, and the members and everybody just wants to see others do well. And I go back to the line, and we've said it here a couple of times, but it's really true. A rising tide does float all boats. And we see that quite clearly in the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. So, Richard, I want to thank you and keep up the great work. We certainly appreciate what you're doing for our communities, for our society. And I always like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice. And quite frankly, Richard, the world needs more Richard Goss. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
I really look forward to having another conversation. And Holly, I don't know you well, but we will after this. We look forward to seeing, how you can be a role model to other young women that are out there in potentially going to go in the similar industry.
100%, Jerry. Lots of great things happening in the Newfoundland and Labrador construction area. A lot of opportunity for young people, a lot of opportunity for a lot of people in that area. And we're certainly looking forward to having a conversation with a leader within that community. So, Holly, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, well, thank you both very much. I really feel honored to be a part of this podcast today. And it's something that the NLCA had mentioned to me a little while ago and asked if I would participate. And of course, I was very, very happy to do so. So I live in St. John's, of course, but I come from the west coast of the island, actually. I grew up in a small community, went to school in a community called Daniels Harbour on the Northern Peninsula. And I was just actually doing a little bit of research last night, and the population in Daniels Harbour, I think, is only about 400 or 500 people. So I came from a pretty humble school, graduated grade 12, and moved to St. John's. My family home is actually in Rocky Harbour, which is it's on the west coast and right in the heart of Grossmoor. But of course, because of work commitments for my father back then, myself and my brother grew up in Daniels Harbour. Came to St. John's in 1985 and went to MUN. I studied civil engineering, graduated and went to work in 1993. And I've made my career since that time in the construction industry, mostly with general contracting firms. I spent 20 years with one of the largest general contracting firms in Newfoundland. And in the last 6 or 7 years, I made the move into with a company called Vigilant Management, and we are a construction agency, I guess you could say, and we work with owners to execute their construction projects. We look after their requirements, and we basically orchestrate the whole thing, right from concept through design, through construction, right to a turnkey package, so that the owner can go and run their business, and we can run the construction project for them.
Holly, I mean, a beautiful part of the world to grow up, to come from. The great Northern Peninsula, as they call it, for sure. What was it about civil engineering, or indeed the construction industry, that grabbed you at such an early age? What made you go into civil engineering?
A few things, I think. I went into engineering first of all because I've always had a very a knack for mathematics and physics. Always enjoyed it. And I chose the engineering field because I wanted a career in a profession that would, in my mind, guarantee, good employment, self-sufficiency, independence. And I really believe we should all, learn and aspire to be the most that we can be. And if I had a mathematics ability, then I should use it. So
right.
That's
awesome.
really it.
Yeah.
A number of factors, and lost my father at a young age as well. So I really, wanted to make sure that I was independent and self-sufficient, and of course I enjoyed the work. I absolutely love the work.
I bet it. And it's, listen, and Memorial offers great engineering programs, produces some fantastic engineers. There's no doubt about that. Good mentors along the way to help guide you as you started. Tell me a little bit about some of those.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate throughout my career. Actually, I've worked with just a few companies, but all of them very, very good companies, very supportive companies who have, encouraged me and nurtured me along the way. There's a few, very select individuals who have over the years taken me under their wing and just helped guide me through, and still do, really. And the neat thing about that is, now that I've got, almost 30 years under my belt, more and more I find that I'm returning the favor and nurturing the younger ones coming up and encouraging other ones, trying to show them the ropes, because it is, it's a complex business.
Yeah,
it's a very risky business. So you really have to have your wits about you, and really have the knowledge base and the experience to navigate and survive in the construction world. That's for sure.
Holly, it must feel great to be able to mentor new people coming into the organization. Tell me about that.
It does. I became involved with the NLCA a few years ago. I've always been involved to some extent with the NLCA, but about I guess 4 years ago, I was an opportunity became available to sit on the board as the Education and Training Committee chair. which I was fortunate enough to gain that position and fortunate enough to hold on to it until now. So during that time, and even predating that, I was approached by the NLCA to deliver some education and training to other members in the form of presenting courses for estimating, which is really my background, as well as blueprint reading, which is also sort of hand in hand with that. So I seized that opportunity, and in as much as, sort of filling that gap for the NLCA, that also helped me tremendously, really, in just, confidence in the subject area and being able to deliver that education to the new up and comers. So as part of sitting on the board and holding that position, we monitor and talk to the members of the association to learn and understand what it is that they require in terms of education and training. And that varies, year after year. And it varies by, the group that you're talking to, and what their needs are and what their experience level is, and where they are in their business, and whether it's a large business or small business. And it might be dictated by the various trades in the industry. So we put a fair amount of work into talking to the members of the association, polling them to learn and understand what serves their needs best. And then we work to develop education and training programs in response to that. So it is very, very fulfilling. And it's, it's just a wonderful feeling to stand in a classroom in a group of people. And really it's not only young people. Sometimes we get some seasoned individuals participating in these education sessions as well, but it's wonderful to have them engaged and to have that verbal exchange, and to just be able to recall and relay to them some of the experiences that I've had. And what I did learn in that experience is that from my own personal history, my greatest learning experiences have been from, doing things wrong or making mistakes.
Yeah.
Whatever, messing things up and then learning the right way. So yeah, it's been really wonderful.
It's rewarding, right? And you kind of nailed it right at the beginning, where you said that you kind of learn along with them as you do it. And that's right. That continuous feedback and that desire for lifelong learning is such an important piece of any industry. And it's clear that the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association understands that, and they're constantly tweaking their membership to continue that lifelong learning path, because the technology moves fast in your industry, no doubt about it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's it is an ever fluid, element of the construction industry. The just information and technology is moving at a pace faster than I don't know if any one individual could keep up with it. Everything from concrete to building envelope systems to roofing, civil work, road work, bridges, you name it. And fortunately, we've got a very diverse group of individuals on the board who, very willingly contribute their time and their information to help us out with those aspects of it. I certainly don't profess to be a highly technically advanced individual. I keep up as much as I can, but in a very big way, I rely on the younger population within my own organization and within the industry to help me and guide me along, as well with what is it that's new, what new technologies do we have, and how do we utilize it, and how do we make our life better and easier, and produce a better outcome for the users, the end users, the builders and the owners.
You tapped into a bit of a rich vein there. Talk about the young people. How much opportunity is there in this industry for young people right now?
I think there is tremendous opportunity. It's an industry that is certainly not for the faint-hearted. I mean, it is a very high-risk industry when it comes to construction, you know, whether it be building construction, roads, bridges, whatever it is. You are constantly working against a clock and against a budget. So I think I mentioned earlier, you really have to have your wits about you. But for individuals who really want a workplace where just every day brings something new, and I can truly attest to that there's really not any day, certainly not any week, when I'm involved in this industry, that I don't come across something that I haven't experienced before. And as I said, I got almost 30 years, you know, behind me, and I work with a lot of, you know, very well seasoned peers, but inevitably there is always something that will manifest that you haven't seen before. So it certainly is an interesting line of work. It's a fulfilling line of work. I mean, I drive around the city and around the province, and again, you know, having spent so much time around here working at this, just, you know, to look at different buildings around the city that I've worked on or participated in somehow, it is extremely fulfilling to see that building come to fruition and completion, and know that you've played a role in that. And there's just such a diversity in construction. I mean, any of a number of ways to work in this industry. It could be, you know, from a design perspective, engineering, project management, trades, you know, working with any of the trades, carpentry, plumbing, millwork, electrical, you name it. Like, there is such a vast offering of potential avenues that a young person could go. And it's, you know, good paying work, and you know, depending on what avenue you get into. I've made a very successful career out of it.
I bet you have.
It's been easy. I mean, it's hard work. You need to stick with it, and it can be very tedious. It can be very frustrating, but it is also extremely rewarding.
Holly, you know what I love about what you said, and I've said this to other guests, you know, I've worked for 30 years in advertising. Sometimes I never really see the results. What I love about your industry, and I think the youth might love that as well, is you can see, like, you drive around and see the buildings you've worked on. I can drive around and know that I've worked on certain advertising campaigns for various businesses, but you don't see the physical buildings and the physical things that you've done. That I find very, very intriguing.
It is. And it's funny you say that, because I remember early days when I was in this, you know, working in construction, I remember a particular day driving around with one of the older superintendents, and he was a pretty good buddy of mine and a good mentor. And, you know, I'm in my, you know, mid-20s and he's in his 50s. But driving around town, and he's pointing out all these different buildings that he constructed. And I just remember, I can remember now thinking to myself, gee, you know, what a neat feeling that must be to know this city so well and to have contributed to building it, which is really what we're doing in the construction industry. We're building the province.
What a great way to describe it. You're building the province. That's fantastic. What you described there, Holly, was brilliant. It sounds like it's a big tent and everybody is invited in there for sure. And I love the way that you tell us about there's always something new. There's always something around the corner that's going to be different. In 30 years, and not a week has gone by that you weren't surprised or intrigued by a new discovery. That's exciting for somebody to get involved in. Holly, you know, you've had a wonderful journey in the construction industry, and as you say, big part of building Newfoundland. What would a piece of advice be to somebody that's looking at this industry to get involved in? What would one piece of advice be from you?
Well, certainly, you know, talk to people, talk to mentors. The NLCA is always open to conversation, with anybody who would like to learn more about the industry. There's many training institutions. I mean, not everybody necessarily has to, go to university. There are trades schools, Kona, Kean Technical College. There's the union organizations, all for the most part, I believe, have their own training colleges and training opportunities. So, one initiative that we're undertaking with the NLCA is to try to go into high schools and these training institutions and deliver, this information to them to educate them on what opportunities are available and how you would navigate making a career in the construction industry. We are within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador notoriously short on trades workers. I mean, that varies from year to year, and there are times when there's an abundance, and most times there's a shortage in the various. Just simply reach out to the Construction Association, or if a young person knows an individual working in the trade, to reach out to them, ask questions. We're hoping to have an initiative where we actually can bring students onto job sites and into the workplace so they can actually experience and see what we're doing, in the run of a day. The company that I work with is a huge advocate of mentoring and teaching students. We bring on business students as well as engineering students in our organization on a regular basis. And we incorporate them right into everything that we're doing. Like, they are a part of the project. So they don't leave at the end of the work term feeling like, you were trying to keep me busy. We actually keep them busy, and they become a part of the project management team.
Wow.
So just, ask questions and stick with it. There will always be obstacles to any goal that someone wants to achieve, but there's ways around those obstacles. There's training programs, there's funding that can be reached, and it's not easy achieving these goals and achieving these if but stick with it and push through it. I always say that when it comes to my job, if it wasn't challenging and if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it.
That's right.
You just need to persevere and stick with it.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, I just feel privileged, Holly, to be talking to you. In our discussions with the NLCA, we call this podcast Building Newfoundland and Labrador. I can't help but think that, what you've just described is exactly that, building Newfoundland and Labrador. And for any youth that are watching this and listening to this, the fact that, you say most times are short on skilled trades, lots of opportunity here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yes, I believe there are. Yeah, very much so.
Well, another wonderful edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. And even today, it just resonates so well with me, this Building Newfoundland and Labrador. So here's Holly coming from a small town on the Great Northern Peninsula and goes on to have a wonderful 30-year career building Newfoundland and Labrador. But what's the most exciting part about it is your desire to want more young people to come on in to the association, come on into this industry, because there's good, solid mentorship there. There's good people there that want to help them grow and want to help them thrive. And there is, as Jerry so rightly points out, plenty of opportunities. Thank you very much, Holly. And I also like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice. And quite frankly, the Newfoundland and Labrador construction industry needs more Holly Hicks. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this.
I want to talk about construction. I want to talk about building Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, Olympic Construction's been synonymous with Building Newfoundland and Labrador for, I'm not sure how many years, but I'm sure we're going to find out with this conversation with Matt today.
Yeah, very, very exciting times for sure in the Newfoundland and Labrador construction industry. A lot of good things happening, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Newfoundland is on the cusp of building, growing. There's so much good things happening, and the Construction Association and all the people that are involved in that are integral in moving Newfoundland and Labrador to the next phase. So we're certainly looking forward to a conversation with Matt today. Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Matt Mallon, project manager with Olympic Construction, and I'm currently the second vice chair with the NLCA. Born and raised in St. John's, Newfoundland in the East End like yourselves, and grew up playing hockey and getting into and out of trouble like all the other kids around. And I think it was about 2007 or so, I started working summer jobs with our family company here, Olympic Construction. Just basically doing anything I could at the time and learning the company from the ground up, with starting with pick and shovel and going everything in between from there.
That's great, Matt. So what part of St. John's? East End, whereabouts?
East End by Rennie's River Trail there.
Excellent. And the company was Olympic was in the family?
Yep. So there was a couple of people that had ownership, and recently past decade or so we took sole ownership.
Great. And what tweaked you in getting involved? I mean, it was obviously talked around the supper table, but were you mechanically inclined? Did you like to get your hands into things? What was it about it?
Yeah, you're always curious how things go together. Say if you're looking at something, it was just something in your brain that you wanted to know how that was made, more or less. I mean, I remember showing the Discovery Channel how it's made, and that kind of grabbed me, and everything was history from there.
Yeah, you're one of those guys like to lean in, get your hands dirty. I've met lots of fellas like that before. Matt, what was your education path?
So went through the high school ranks like everybody here, and then I went to Memorial to study civil engineering after the couple summer work experiences in the construction field, and learn about buildings and concrete and soils and everything else. It was kind of a natural progression to the civil engineering field.
Yeah, MUN's got a great program there, eh?
Yeah, very good, and the co-op program's great. It gets you out in the industry quicker than most programs across Canada.
Tell me about the co-op experience. What were some of the good things?
I mean, you got money in your pocket while you're still in school. I mean, I know a lot of our friends that were doing the program, walked out of there with no student debt and a longer resume than most compared to some schools across Canada. And it gives you real world work experience. I mean, I've said it before, the information and knowledge I've learned from carpenters, sheet metal workers, laborers throughout the years has been, more or, the same amount that I learned through engineering, formal training, right? The organic training that you learn on the job was, just as important as the formal education training that we got throughout the 5 years of engineering.
Matt, you've mentioned a really interesting thing there, and that is learning as an engineer, learning as much from the skilled tradespeople as you did from your university professors. Expand on that a little bit, because not only do you learn a great deal from them, but you start establishing a relationship, because as you get into big projects and stuff, you rely heavily on one another. So tell me the importance of learning from one another there.
Yeah, I guess the engineering background, you usually see plans and specifications, blueprints to written specs, and the trades people that are out there now know how to translate the from a piece of paper to actually make it work in the field and build something that you can reach out and touch. So just bridging that gap between the two was valuable for me in terms of envisioning how everything from engineering goes through to actually get built in the field.
I can just kind of envision young engineering students arrive out at the build site. Got to be some old timers around there say, "Come along here, let me show you how this is done." Any funny stories about that?
Oh, there's lots. I don't know if they're PG rated or not, but
we're targeting youth.
They really do humble you.
I said we're targeting youth with this podcast, so we'll refrain from those.
No, but 100%, right. And what I love about that is that, you know, Jerry and I have come to understand and learn through these podcasts that there's a real genuine desire within this industry to help new people coming into it, whether they be young or coming from other backgrounds, but helping people thrive in the industry. It's you can touch it and you can feel it when we're in these conversations with people. Would you agree, Matt?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I remember one of my first times on site that really opened my eyes was there was a complex building systems that had to happen mechanically, a boiler, superheated steam pressure. And the engineers had something drawn up and walked into the mechanical room with them, and the master plumber said, none of this is going to work. And basically they went back to the drawing board and brought the master plumber with them to basically make it work how it should and it can actually be built, right? So that was a good experience just to see that it's not as easy as it looks on paper.
Wouldn't you like to have a nickel for every time that happened? The engineers bring in the drawings and the master plumber, master electrician says, that's not going to work, fellas.
All the time.
Now, listen, it seems to me like there's a whole lot of opportunity there right now, especially in Newfoundland and Labrador, whole lot of opportunity in the industry. And these are good paying jobs. I mean, these are not, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Like in the skilled trades, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're comparable to 90% of the office jobs that you're going to see around Newfoundland and Labrador for sure. And I mean, you're out in the fresh air. You're not sitting down at a desk all day long. You're getting your legs stretched. So yeah, 100%. It's one of the most rewarding career paths I've seen because it's something that you can actually reach out and touch. And, you're building something that you can drive by and tell your kids, hey, I worked on this project. I built this, built that type of thing. Right.
And that's a great feeling, right? It must be amazing to drive around the streets and say, I had a part of that.
For sure, yeah, and I mean the buildings don't go anywhere, so as long as you're around, you're going to be able to say I was a part of that project.
And I love hearing this, and Alan, you've heard me say it, but I drive around this city with my kids and say, look, I've been in advertising for 30 years. I sold radio. Like, what do you tell them, right? It's difficult. So substantial bricks and mortar, man, kudos to you.
100%. And Matt, I bet every bill's got a little story too. There might a funny thing or two that happened in the bill that you could pass on, and it breathes life to the whole project.
Yeah, and I mean the cast of characters you meet is usually pretty colorful along the way. I mean, all different types of backgrounds and personalities and sense of humor and stuff that you get into that you couldn't really write in a book.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, you're painting a picture of a pretty exciting and engaging industry and a place that there's certainly opportunity for people to get involved in. What type of work is Olympic Construction doing right now?
So we're a commercial general contractor. So basically we are the turnkey point of contact for any developments that we oversee. Beneath us, there is a bunch of subcontractors and suppliers that kind of fit the mold and build to plans and specifications. What we have on our books right now, some bigger projects would be, of course, the Jag Hotel expansion downtown for the Steel Group. We're doing a marine base for Memorial University in Holyrood. As well as Marine Institute. I believe they're combining, educational facilities out there. And then we're also renovating the Audi car dealership on Kenmount Road. Okay. So that was a Volkswagen Audi shared building, but when we finish the new Volkswagen building, Audi now is taking the full building on the former location on Kenmount Road.
A lot of moving parts in all those projects. A lot of what's required, of course, and don't have to say, it goes without saying, there's a lot of collaboration required to make all of this work between all the subcontractors and stuff. And that brings me to my next question with you. You're heavily involved with the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, where collaboration is everywhere. You need to work together to be stronger together. Tell me a little bit about your involvement with them.
With the Newfoundland Construction Association?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've gotten involved with them. So I'd say professionally since 2016, when I went full time here. They were kind of the center of the universe for the Newfoundland building industry. I mean, that's where we go to know what projects are upcoming, what projects are ongoing, and they give you good educational and training resources as well for just continued education. And then from there, I mean, there's hundreds of companies and individuals there that have different skills and assets that, you can use for education and training for yourself, or you can also collaborate with them on future projects and work alongside them for, say, design build situations. And, it's just endless opportunities.
It sounds like a great one-stop shop, to get to make all the connections you need.
Yeah, for any company out there that is involved in the commercial, institutional, construction industries, it's pretty well the one-stop shop for everything.
Matt, we always ask our guests, guys like you, who've had, you're having a great time. You can tell. I can tell that you're having a great time in your career right now. We always ask guys like you to leave the audience with one small piece of advice. What would you tell somebody who's looking at this industry right now as a potential opportunity?
Piece of advice would be to try and take something away from everyone that you meet here, because they all have such valuable skill sets that, that doesn't necessarily get taught in the classroom setting, but just try and learn something new from everyone you meet.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great piece of advice, not only in your industry, but in life. Try to take a little bit something away from the people that you meet every day, because they add to this beautiful mosaic of society that we have. And it's so rich in Newfoundland. It's fantastic. And as you say, you might get a colorful story along the way. Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, just as I'm listening to Matt, I was looking at your website, and, you're incorporated in 1977. That's a lot of years of experience building Newfoundland and Labrador. And, as I said at the beginning, Olympic Construction synonymous with building Newfoundland and Labrador. And a quick look around the projects, some buildings that are iconic in this community. And I just think that, what you and your team are doing is phenomenal. And I feel privileged to be able to sit and have a chat with you.
I greatly appreciate it, you guys as well, and I've been following along the podcast, and it's been great. Keep up what you're doing. It's good for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, another wonderful edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. It's so exciting to be in conversation with people like Matt Malum, who clearly enjoy what they're doing. But the best part of it is that they're learning every single day from the people that are on the job sites, the people that have gone there before them. They know the importance of pulling those skills out of the other people, and the genuine desire for those people to pass that knowledge on. It's clear to me that there's a whole lot of opportunity in this industry right now in Newfoundland and Labrador. I always like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, Matt, and that is, quite simply, this industry needs more Matt Malum.
Thank you for tuning in to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds.